Did you know you're throwing away hundreds of dollars every winter on tiny propane bottles when you could be spending less than $1 per refill? In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you 3 game-changing buddy heater hacks that will save you serious money, let you cook meals in emergencies, and keep you warmer than ever before. These aren't just theories, I've tested every single one so you know exactly what works and what's just YouTube hype. Welcome to Prep Pantry, where we test the survival hacks that actually matter. If you're serious about emergency preparedness without wasting money, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss our real-world testing videos. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Those little green propane bottles are bleeding your wallet dry. Each one costs around $6 at most stores, and here's the kicker. On high heat, you're only getting about 3.5 hours of use. Switch to low and you might stretch it to 5.5 hours. Now do the math. If you're using your buddy heater regularly through the winter, or if you're relying on it during a power outage, you're going through bottle after bottle after bottle. Let's say you run your heater just 4 hours a day for a month. That's roughly 30 bottles at $6 each. You're looking at $180 for a single month of heat, and that's being conservative. Most people use their heaters way more than that when temperatures really drop. But here's what really gets me. It's not just about the money. Every single one of those disposable bottles ends up in a landfill. Even if you're diligent about recycling, most facilities don't accept them because of residual propane. So you're literally throwing money away while creating mountains of waste. There has to be a better way, right? Well, there is, and it's been hiding in plain sight this whole time. The refillable propane bottle system is an absolute game changer, and I can't believe more people aren't talking about this. Here's how it works. You invest about $50 upfront. That gets you a Mr. Heater fuel keg for around $18 and a refueling kit for about $30. Yeah, $50 sounds like a lot when you're used to buying $6 bottles, but stick with me. Once you have this set up, you can refill your 1-pound bottles directly from a standard 20-pound propane tank, the same kind you probably already have for your grill. And here's where the magic happens. Refilling from a 20-pound tank brings your cost down to just 60 to 70 cents per pound. That's less than $1 for the same amount of propane that would cost you $6 in a disposable bottle. And the refilling process itself is surprisingly straightforward. You connect your empty 1-pound bottle to your refueling kit, then connect that to your 20-pound tank. Follow the instructions carefully. There's a specific process to ensure you're filling safely and completely. The whole thing takes just a few minutes, and suddenly you're getting the same heat for less than 1/6 of the cost. Let's run those numbers again. Remember that $180 for a month of heating? With refillable bottles, you're looking at about $30. That $50 initial investment pays for itself in less than 2 weeks of regular use. After that, it's pure savings. Plus, you're keeping all of those disposable bottles out of landfills. It's a win-win that seems almost too good to be true, but I've been using this system myself, and the savings are real. Now, if you really want to maximize your fuel efficiency and you're planning to use your heater for extended periods, there's an even better option, connecting directly to a 20-pound propane tank. This is manufacturer approved, by the way, so you're not voiding any warranties or doing anything sketchy. You just need a hose adapter, which you can pick up for about $15 to $20. Here's what makes this setup so powerful. A 20-pound propane tank can give you up to 70 hours of heat on high. 70 hours. That's almost 3 full days of continuous heating from a single tank that costs about $12 to $15 to refill. Compare that to buying individual bottles, and we're talking about savings that add up to hundreds of dollars over a single winter. But, and this is a huge but, you need to take safety seriously with this setup. Never, and I mean never, keep a large propane tank indoors. If that tank develops a leak, you're looking at a potentially deadly situation. Propane is heavier than air, so it sinks and accumulates at ground level. One spark and you've got a massive problem. So here's the safe way to do this. You're going to run the hose through a window or door, keeping the tank outside while your heater stays inside. Open your window just enough to fit the hose through. Take a towel and seal up the gap around the hose as best you can to prevent drafts. Position your buddy heater on a windowsill or small table right by the window, then run the hose out to your propane tank sitting safely outside. I know what you're thinking, won't this let in cold air and defeat the purpose? Not really. The amount of heat you're getting from the buddy heater far outweighs the minimal cold air seeping in around a well-sealed hose connection. Just make sure you're using a proper hose adapter designed for this purpose and check all your connections for leaks before you start heating. This setup is perfect for extended use situations. Think cabin heating, garage workshops, or during multi-day power outages. You've got reliable heat without constantly swapping bottles or worrying about running out of fuel at 2 in the morning when it's negative 10 degrees outside. Now let's move on to something that surprises most people: cooking on your buddy heater.
I've seen dozens of YouTube videos claiming you can turn your heater into a makeshift stove. And honestly, I was skeptical. But I tested these methods myself because in an emergency situation, being able to heat food and boil water could be crucial. The first method everyone talks about is the flipped grate hack. Your buddy heater has a protective grate on top, right? The idea is simple. Remove that top grate, flip it upside down, and reattach it. This supposedly creates a flat surface you can set a pot or pan on. So I tried it. I removed the grate, flipped it over, and screwed it back on. Then I grabbed a medium-sized pot and placed it on top. The first thing I noticed, it's definitely not as stable as a real stove. The pot wobbles a bit and the grate slopes downwards slightly. I was able to set an empty pot on there without it sliding off, and I even filled it with a quart of water to test the stability under weight. It held, but just barely. The pot shifted when I adjusted it, and I had to be really careful not to knock it over. I managed to heat the water, but the whole time I was nervous about the pot tipping. Another issue? When you flip that grate, you're removing the protective barrier that keeps you from accidentally touching the hot ceramic heating element. If you've got kids or pets around, this is a serious safety concern. Can you cook with this method? Technically, yes. Would I recommend it for anything more than an absolute emergency? Honestly, no. The instability alone makes it risky, and the lack of protection around the heating element is a real hazard. But hey, if it's an emergency and you need to warm up a can of soup or boil water for purification, it'll get the job done in a pinch. Now, here's where things get interesting. The second cooking hack I tested actually works way better than the grate method, and it costs about $2. I'm talking about the metal paint roller tray hack. Yeah, you read that right. A paint roller tray from the hardware store. Here's what you do. Grab one of those metal paint roller trays, the kind with the curved arms that hook over the edge of a paint bucket. You're going to modify those arms by bending them to create a 90-degree angle. This lets you hook the tray securely onto your heater, creating a much more stable cooking platform than the flipped grate. I'll be honest, when I first heard about this hack, I thought it sounded ridiculous. But after bending the arms and hooking the tray onto my heater, I was shocked at how sturdy it was. I placed my pot on the tray, filled it with a quart of water, and cranked the heater to high. 23 minutes later, I had rapidly boiling water. 23 to 24 minutes for a full boil on high heat? That's actually not bad at all for a device that's not designed to be a stove. The tray stayed level, the pot didn't wobble, and I could adjust the position without worrying about everything crashing to the floor. Now, there is one problem I ran into. After about 15 minutes of use, the handle of the tray started getting really hot. If your paint tray has a plastic handle, you need to watch out for melting. I adjusted the position of my pot to keep it away from the handle area, which helped quite a bit. But if you're planning to use this method regularly, you might want to look for a tray with a metal handle, or just remove the handle entirely. The paint roller tray method is legitimately useful for emergency cooking. I could see this being a real lifesaver during a power outage or in a camping situation where you need to cook but don't have access to a traditional stove. That said, I need to be clear about something. Buddy heaters are not designed to be stoves. They're heaters. Period. If you're going to cook on your buddy heater using either of these methods, you need to monitor everything constantly. Never leave it unattended. Watch for signs of overheating. If the heater starts acting weird or you smell anything unusual, shut it down immediately. And make sure you've got proper ventilation because you're essentially running your heater for extended periods while adding the combustion from cooking. For occasional emergency use, these cooking hacks are valuable skills to have in your survival toolkit. But if you're camping regularly or you need to cook frequently during power outages, do yourself a favor and invest in a dedicated camp stove. They're designed for cooking, they're safer, and they're more efficient. The buddy heater cooking hacks are your backup plan, not your primary solution. All right, let's talk about staying warm more efficiently. Here's something that frustrates me about buddy heaters. They put out amazing heat, but it all rises straight up to the ceiling. That's just physics, right? Hot air rises. But what that means in practice is that your upper body and the top half of your room get toasty while your feet and the floor stay cold. If you've ever sat next to a buddy heater and felt warm on one side but cold on the other, or if you've noticed that the space 3 feet away from the heater is significantly colder, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The heater is pumping out radiant heat, but it's not distributing that heat evenly throughout the space. In a small tent, this might not matter much, but in a garage, cabin, or larger room, you're wasting a lot of that heat potential. This is especially noticeable in drafty spaces or rooms with high ceilings. All that warm air you're paying for just sits up there doing nothing while you're still shivering at ground level. It's inefficient and uncomfortable, and for the longest time, I just accepted it as part of using a portable heater. Then I discovered heat-powered fans, and honestly, this hack changed everything. These are the same type of fans people use on wood stoves. They sit on top of the heat source and spin using the temperature difference between the base and the top of the fan.
No batteries, no electricity, no cords. The heat itself powers the fan. I placed one of these fans on top of my buddy heater and turned the heater on high. Within about a minute, the fan started spinning. It wasn't super fast at first, but as the heater warmed up, the fan speed increased noticeably. And here's what made me a believer. I could feel the difference in air circulation immediately. I did a simple test with a piece of paper, holding it near the fan to see if air was actually moving. The paper fluttered consistently, showing that the fan was pushing warm air horizontally instead of letting it all rise straight up. I walked around the room and the temperature felt much more even than it did without the fan. The cold spots weren't as cold and the overall comfort level improved significantly. The fan itself doesn't get excessively hot to the touch, which is good from a safety standpoint. Obviously, you should still be careful and check it periodically, especially in the first few uses, but I was pleasantly surprised that it stayed cool enough that accidental contact wouldn't cause burns, even though it was sitting directly on top of the heater, putting out serious BTUs. The real test came during an extended heating session. I ran my buddy heater with the fan on top for several hours while working in my garage. Normally, I'd have to position myself right in front of the heater to stay comfortable, constantly rotating like a rotisserie chicken to warm all sides evenly. With the fan running, I could sit several feet away and still feel comfortable because the warm air was circulating throughout the space. Now, you do need to monitor for overheating, especially if you're using a fan that wasn't specifically designed for use with portable heaters. Check it every 20 to 30 minutes during your first few uses. Make sure the base of the fan isn't getting dangerously hot, and ensure the fan blades are spinning freely without any resistance or weird noises. If anything seems off, remove the fan immediately and let everything cool down. The airflow improvement is substantial enough that I now consider a heat-powered fan essential for using a buddy heater in any space larger than a small tent. The difference in comfort is that noticeable. And when you think about it from an efficiency standpoint, you're getting more value out of the propane you're burning because you're actually using all that heat instead of watching it collect uselessly at ceiling level. These fans typically run anywhere from $20 to $50, depending on the brand and size. Given how much they improve the heating experience, I'd say they're worth every penny. Just make sure you're buying one that's appropriately sized for your buddy heater. You don't want something so large that it becomes unstable on top of the heater. One more thing about the fan setup. It works best in enclosed or semi-enclosed spaces. If you're trying to heat an area that's completely open or extremely drafty, the fan will help, but you're still fighting physics. The ideal scenario is a room with walls and a door you can close, where the circulated warm air actually stays in the space instead of immediately escaping. So let's bring this all together. We've covered 3 major hacks that genuinely transform how you use your buddy heater. First, the refillable propane system or direct tank connection that drops your fuel costs from $6 per bottle down to under $1. That's the kind of savings that actually matters when you're running a heater regularly or preparing for emergencies. Second, the cooking hacks, specifically that paint roller tray method that turns your heater into a functional emergency cooking surface. Yeah, the flipped grate technically technically works, but the tray is so much more stable and practical. Just remember, this is for emergency situations, not everyday use. Your buddy heater isn't a replacement for a real stove, but knowing you can boil water and heat food in a pinch, that's valuable survival knowledge. And third, the heat-powered fan that solves the radiant heat problem and actually distributes warmth throughout your space. This one surprised me with how much of a difference it makes in overall comfort. It's the difference between huddling directly next to the heater and actually warming your whole garage or cabin. These aren't theoretical hacks I pulled from random internet forums. I tested every single one of these methods myself because I wanted to know what actually works and what's just YouTube hype. The refillable system has saved me hundreds of dollars over the past year. The paint roller cooking method has gotten me through power outages where I needed to heat water and food. And that fan, it's permanently living on top of my buddy heater now because the comfort improvement is that significant. If you found this real-world testing valuable, do me a favor and smash that like button and subscribe to Prep Pantry so you don't miss our upcoming videos where we keep testing survival gear and emergency preparedness hacks to see what's actually worth your money and what's just marketing hype. We're all about practical preparedness here, the stuff that actually works when you need it. Drop a comment below and tell me which hack you're trying first. Are you going for those massive fuel savings with the refillable system, planning to test the paint roller cooking method, or are you ready to add a fan and finally get even heat distribution? I read every single comment and I love hearing about your experiences with these hacks. Stay warm, stay prepared, and remember, the best survival tool is the one you actually know how to use. The buddy heater is already a fantastic piece of equipment, but with these tested modifications, you're turning it into a true multi-purpose survival asset. Thanks for watching Prep Pantry, and I'll see you in the next video.